Hi, and thank you for joining us for this episode of the State of Leadership Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitney Wiley, and we are here on Thursdays, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, talking all things leadership. And this week we are talking about energy, and we're talking about how you can manage your energy so that you can better manage your time and prevent burnout. So, we have done a couple of episodes about time management. And within those conversations, we have talked about the importance of energy in terms of managing your time. And now we're going to talk about managing your energy actually to help you manage your time. So it goes both ways, right? If you manage your energy, it helps you manage your time. Manage your time helps you manage your energy. And a really interesting thing that I saw um, when I posted this on LinkedIn, one of the comments was that managing energy is like the ultimate leadership hack. I love that comment,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's something we don't often think about. We are focused on lots of other skills, lots of other components, and energy often gets left out of the conversation. So, any opening thoughts?
Completely off topic. Your audio sounds pristine and clear. I know you got some new technology going on, but wow, it's like you're in the
Well,
room
thank
with
you.
me.
I did, and in terms of helping to manage energy, there was a lot of energy that I was wasting making the technology I had work.
Yeah.
So we could do an episode about those things, right? The things that we do to try to make things work. But I was wasting a lot. I will say a lot of energy just trying to keep things afloat. And then one day someone said, "Let's go get you some new technology." And I was like, "Yeah."
That's great. No, but as far as opening comments are concerned, I think this is very appropriate because it's the summertime, right? And there's a lot going on in the summertime. People that have kids, well, the kids are now off from school, so it makes more sense, And if you're working from home and your kids are home, or if you're just home with your kids at the same time, you need to understand or learn or be acquainted with how to manage your energy so that you can be efficient and so that you don't burn out. Really important when you're on vacation. We've heard these things before. People go on vacation, but they come back more tired than when before they left on vacation. So really important that you manage your energy in situations like this.
Okay, let's keep this like tangent going because you bring up vacation, and I'm just interested in knowing what kind of vacationer are you? Are you a like I'm like really down for relaxing, or are you one of those we go someplace and you feel a need to see and do everything where you are?
um, you know my personality, so it's no surprise that I am a stay in place staycation, or go someplace and stay in place there. I am a boring vacation person. If I go someplace like Europe, of course I'm going to want to see things, but I'm also going to want to take some time to relax and decompress, because just think about it. Just traveling can be very stressful, and it can take a lot of energy. But I am the kind of person that likes to kind of stay in place almost too much. So I try to balance it out. So my tendency is to be kind of sedentary on vacation. I'll still do things that I like to do, but I try to use my vacation to recharge. But when I go away, I try to balance that out with doing some sightseeing and other activities.
So I would say I'm similar with the exception of the balancing out part. I feel no need to balance it. I I will do some things. And I would say I'm probably a boring vacationer as well. I like going where I've been, where I know how to navigate what is. But that is a huge part of me understanding sort of my energy cycles, right? Which is ultimately what we're talking about here today, not vacations. Although I think it's really important that you understand how you vacation as well as how you manage, how you how you use your energy, how you replenish your energy, right? That goes to self awareness, how important it is to understand these things about yourself so that you can maximize and leverage, right, what you have to work with. And that's what we're about here. So we've all heard that time is money, but I want to just pose this question: what if energy is the real currency in leadership? And then you see what I did there? You see what I did there?
I saw what you did there. But you know what? It kind of is, because if you don't manage your energy well, you're not going to be able to take advantage of any time that you have. I've missed out on opportunities to make money because I was too tired to go to that extra meeting, or schedule that thing with that person, whatever that thing was, or and because of that, other things kind of abutted with that, and so I never was able to do that. So I kind of agree with that energy is really the currency, because if you don't have the energy, you won't be able to make time, you won't feel it, you can. So it's really important.
I love that your story, right? Which is it, and this is true of me. I hadn't, I think, thought about it the way you just said it. But how many times have I had on my calendar to do something, particularly networking, to go to an event, and it's like I just don't have the energy. I don't want to go, and then somehow mustering up enough to go. And here's the beautiful part: when you get there, if it is that you can turn it around and reap the benefits that come along with that, the rewards that come along with that. But it's usually that initial push that gets you over the hump, that allows you to get there and then show up. And it takes an intentional, concerted effort sometimes to muster that up, but we don't have to work so hard, right? We don't have to work so hard to muster it up. And we'll talk about some strategies that can help you to have that energy, not necessarily more steadily, but certainly understanding your rhythm, your cycles, so that to the degree that it's possible, you can schedule your day, schedule the activities of your day in a way that allow you to take advantage and leverage when you are high energy. And a couple of weeks ago, I was training, we did a 2 day training for administrative assistants. And we actually talked about this quite a bit, because the job of an admin is to be there in service of other people, right? And it could be in service of multiple other people who have different personalities, different work styles, different communication styles, and not necessarily being in a position where they can control the flow of work that comes at them during the day. And, one of the benefits that I feel I have running my business is that I get to control when I do what. So I have a great advantage in that respect. So understanding my work cycles, when I work best. I'm a morning person, right? Doing the things that require my mental capacity, my creative ability, scheduling those in the time of day where it makes sense for me. But all of us don't have that ability. And when you don't, to the degree you have that ability, do that. But when you don't, what can you do to help you bring your energies up so that you can continue to do the things that you need to do? And so, we can't create more hours in a day. We just, we can't. Um, Although I do have a hack or two that I believe makes it possible to sort of stretch the hours. We get what, 1,440 minutes in a day, I believe it is. And we all have the same number of hours, but you look around, some people are much more productive than others. Some people are able to get more done. They are able to, you see them and they always at least seem to be up and energetic. And the question you should be asking is, what are they doing? And what can I learn from them that would be helpful? So we can't create more hours, we can't create more minutes, but we can manage how we show up in them. And that's really what we want to get to today. So, let me just pose this question in general, and I'm going to pose this question for you as well, Robert. Have you ever gotten a ton of work done in a short amount of time just because you feel like your energy was aligned with what you were doing?
Absolutely. We talked about this, I think, on another, well, certainly on another episode. One of the things I used to do in my last job when I was working for somebody else is officially I started at 9, but I would come in at 8. And I was able to do so much in that extra hour because I was clear. I didn't have those mental distractions. So we talked about the different types of energy. I could align my mental energy in such a way where I was super clear. A lot of times, what I would do the day before, if there was a problem that I knew had to be solved relatively quickly or within the next week or two, I would start working on that toward the end of the day. So when I came in the next day, I kind of had a head start. So I would start working on those things, or at least align certain things together. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to research this thing. I'm going to use the first 20 minutes to research this really difficult topic that we need to find a solution to. I'll come in early and do that. And I would not only blast through that, but had time left over. So that first third of that hour, I would get through that, and then I would move on to the next couple of things. And by the time people started trickling in, because think about it, 9 o'clock, people come in, they go and they get their coffee or whatever, and they don't really start getting to their desk and really starting working until like 9:15, although they're supposed to be working at 9, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that gave me an extra 15-minute buffer before my phone would start ringing and I'd have to answer emails and things like that. So I was able to do a lot of work with that extra hour. And think about it, you do that every day during a week, and it adds up. That's 5 extra hours that you have. So that's what I was doing.
Absolutely, right? And so that goes to the point. While you cannot add more minutes to the day or more hours to the day, what you did in essence was to create 5 more productive hours,
Yeah.
right? You still have the same number, 1,440 minutes, but you were able to take 300 of those minutes, let's say, and be more productive with them. So it really paying attention to this allows you to maximize what you're able to do. And if you would just ask yourself some questions, not just am I a morning person or an afternoon person, but what about that time like really works for you, right? Because your calendar, again, your calendar doesn't know when you do your best thinking. It doesn't know when you are able to be on. And there may be a difference between the kinds of activities that you do and when's the best time for certain activities, right? So you might be a good morning thinker or creative in the morning, but you're better socially at a different time of day. And so think about the nature of the activities that you have as part of your days, whether it's regularly or periodically, and the nature of those activities, and when you have the energy for that type of activity. So while I'm really great thinking and being creative in the morning, not necessarily want to be bothered with people in the morning, right? So, or early in the morning anyway. And so, moving those things like meetings and scheduling sessions with my clients to later in the morning, not the first thing in the morning, but later in the morning. I can think, I can write, do those things early, and then save the other activities. And then, like admin tasks and things like that, saving those for the afternoon when it doesn't require me to really think, right? I could do I could delete emails out of my inbox anytime, right? And there are just some things that it doesn't matter when they get done as long as they get done. So you want to be conscious and aware of not only what your natural highs and lows are throughout the day, but match the task to that energy level as well.
Yeah, and the I think the beauty of, and this was not anything, there was no strategic, it was just something that came to me as I was working in this organization. Like, look, I kind of understood the rhythm of the traffic, people coming into the office. I worked in human resources, and my desk was aligned with the door. So when people came in, I was the first person they saw. So I was usually the person that fielded those questions, unless they came in to see a specific person. So it was, I was like, okay, if I need to get work done, I need to come in early. But the on the other side of that, since I was a salaried employee, and my boss was aware that I was coming in early because I was always there before he got there, I could say, you know what? I've been coming in early every week, every day this week. Can I leave early this Friday? And I would leave early, an hour early sometimes, because I had already done even though I was a salaried employee, I had already done my 8 hours. I was, so it worked out. It was very beneficial for I think everybody involved, because I got a lot more work accomplished, and I was able to avoid burnout because I was strategically picked those times when, I'm going to leave an hour early, or an hour and a half early. I'll make up that time later on
Mhm.
because I am coming to work early. So it worked very well for me.
Awesome. So, thinking about rhythms, there are aspects, right? So, there is active work, and then there is recovery, right? And so, we have to remember that recovery is strategic, right? This is a natural part of how we replenish our energy, and understanding not just when you work well, right? Not just when you're creative, when you think well, but thinking about what type of recovery is best for you, is good for you, so that you can replenish. And understanding whether it's taking your breaks, right? Taking rest, being, taking extended time off, right? Our work weeks are structured with, we work at the end of the day, whether you work, regardless of what your technical schedule is, right? There's an active part of the day, and then there is the downtime. So you work, you rest, you work, you rest on a daily basis. And then typically we've got the 2 days for the weekend, right? That is that opportunity for that. And asking yourself whether or not you are leveraging your time for rest. Are you taking your breaks during the day? Are you relaxing at the end of the day? Are you relaxing on the weekend, or doing activities that feed you, even if you are not necessarily, I'm not, when I'm saying rest, doesn't mean you have to be laid out on the bed, right, all weekend. But are you doing things? Are you doing things that it's just that's what you do? Are you doing things that are replenishing you? Right? You could be playing your instrument or doing jujitsu all weekend. If that feeds you and relaxes you, the fact that you were active in that is not a bad thing, right? If none of that, though, helps you to feel replenished and rejuvenated, that's a different thing. And so we have, just as we have to think about when we're at our best to be active, we have to think about what kinds of activities or non activities are best for us in terms of recovery. So, one of the challenges that I get from my clients, I hear this from my clients when we begin working together. And here's the thing, that a commonality amongst my clients is this feeling of being overworked, overwhelmed, burned out, right? And they feel like they don't have time to take breaks during the day. They don't have time to go on vacation. And I'm saying you have to do that for yourself so that you can be your best. And as they're, trying to convince me they don't have time, we talk about how effective and productive are you doing it the way that you're doing it, right? And there's a light bulb moment that will go off and say, okay, this really isn't working for me, and I have to let go. But we've got a society, we live in a world where busy is glorified, right?
Oh, yeah.
Being like constantly on the go. And I know you live particularly in a portion of this country, right? We're in the United States, where it's really glorified, right? It's one of the, it's what's known about New Yorkers, is that that's what you guys are known, go, 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 right? I'm
Oh,
on the West Coast. We're a little
laid back.
chiller, a little chiller here.
Well, it's really funny because I used to work with this person that would it was kind of like, I don't want to say it was an in-office joke because I don't want to make fun of this person, but this person would walk around with their clipboard frantically throughout the office. And every time you said hello to that person, I'm so busy, I can't talk now. I was like, I'm not trying to talk to you. I'm just saying hello. But it was really funny because it later was revealed that that person was not as productive as they were letting on. It was this notion that they had to look very busy. And I've told you about comments I've had from, surprisingly senior executives, about my work area being too clean because it didn't look like I was busy. But meanwhile, I
Mm-hmm.
was doing all these different things. But the thing was, well, you have to look busy whether or not you actually are busy. What I found to be interesting about that situation was the person that was judging, my productivity by sight never asked about any of the projects I was working on. They would just would come in and make a very quick 2-second scan of my desk before they
Mm-hmm.
went in to talk to my boss and like, what is he working on? Because he's typing there, but his desk is so clean. And to me, that was one of the most ridiculous things that I ever heard in my life. Is like, well, A, it says in the handbook that your area should be clean. So already you're showing me that as a senior executive of the organization, you don't understand, you didn't read your own handbook. But it was like a weird thing. But we do have this glorified, let's be really, really busy, look really, really busy, or even make ourselves really, really busy. But the real the real answer to this is, are you being productive?
Right.
Because you can be sitting there, not moving physically and going over high level calculations, and yet you know that because you're good at math, right? And you could be thinking about things and then come up with the answer to a really serious problem because you had the time to really slow down and engage with yourself mentally to be able to do that. Or you can be really frantic and have this frenetic energy, physical energy going on. And because you're doing all of that, your mind cannot be clear. And therefore, you can't come up with any solutions. We all see or have seen the trope of the panicked swimmer, the person that is
Yeah.
a good swimmer, but because they're so panicked, they forgot how to coordinate their arms and their legs and their body so they can save themselves, right? They're too hysterical. Well, that the same thing can happen in your work. If you're, all frenetic and you're doing all this busy work, are you really paying attention to the things that really matter? The things that are going to have the biggest impact for your organization, for your department, for your career. And I think that's really, really important.
Absolutely. And I want to dig into that a little more in just a sec. Um, this concept of being strategic with our recovery, right? And it includes not only breaks, taking your breaks, getting rest, but it's about movement, right? Because our bodies are made to move. Movement creates energy, and but strategic movement, right? Intentional movement, not frenetic movement for the sake of moving. And it could be something as simple as yoga or tai chi, right? Something that helps us get into a flow, something that moves the energy in our body. Sometimes we need to release things as much as we need to bring things in. And then emotional regulation, right? All of those are tools that can help with performance. And the reason that this matters is because, burnt out leaders are reactive in their decision making, right? And we've talked about the decision making and how important it is for leaders, and being strategic, one of Robert's favorite concepts, right? Being strategic in your decision making is impacted when you're burned out, when you are tired, when you can't think clearly. And so making sure that you're integrating recovery into your daily routine, your rhythm, is important while it's happening and not after you're depleted, right? And that's what we're seeing a lot of people who are, they're burned out, they're depleted, and it's not just a matter of taking things off your calendar. And when we get into talking about the things that sort of really matter that you were just talking about, bringing up how tapping into your purpose can help with that as well. So, what we don't want is for you to feel like you have to continue to push, 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 right? Until you burn out, till you flame out, until you crash. That is not it may feel like you're being productive, but in the end, if you ask the question, was that your best work? Sometimes you'll get things done, but it's not your best work. It's not the best solutions. You didn't make the best decisions. And if you have to repeat things, that is the very opposite of being productive.
Yeah, I think that when we really get into this, and I'm sure that you'll mention this, knowing how you recharge yourself. One of the things that, and you kind of hinted at this in the very beginning when you said, "Well, how do you take vacation?" I One of the things that I do when I'm either burnt out or feeling like I'm burning out is I need a period of just stasis. where nothing is happening. And sometimes when this happens, I feel like I'm not being quote unquote productive, but I know that on the other side of that,
Yeah.
I'm going to have that burst of energy. I'm going to be able to replenish. As you know, I'm always doing research. It's one of the things that I love to do. I always study my craft, my coaching, whether it's organizational development. I'm always studying something so I can bring something new to the
Yeah.
table. I do that with music. I do it with photography. I'm a lifelong student, and I like to be really good at my craft. Because we know that there is no best. There's always somebody better, but I want to be really good at my craft. So when I'm helping my clients or dealing with my customers, and they have a dilemma, I can get them to a solution or help them come up with a solution
Hmm.
quickly. But in order to develop, to have that kind of, for lack of a better word, expertise, it takes a lot out of me. So I need that time when
Yeah.
I am not doing anything, which is hard for me because you know that on vacations, I'm taking a strategy book with me, and I've had to really back away from that,
Right.
and say, you know what, this vacation is, unless there's something that I really need to work on, because a client is requesting that when I come back from vacation, I really need to be well versed in this thing, or it's a really hairy problem. I tend to not bring that stuff with me now so that I can just replenish myself. Or if I'm having a staycation, I'll gamify it. I'm not going to touch that stuff for 3 days. I'm going to watch all the movies I want to watch. I'm going to go see a concert. I'm going to go to whatever it is. And then after 3 days, I can start maybe opening the cover and reading the forward. Right. So, so that I don't get too, hooked into that, because that kind of stuff leads to burnout.
Absolutely, absolutely. And your point is exactly the point. You need to understand what it takes for you to recharge, right? And the types of things that you want to look at and consider is, do you need to have absolute stasis, right? Do you need to shut it all down? And how, if that's what you need, how do you counter that hit, that voice in your head that says that you doing nothing is you either being lazy, or that somehow you're shirking some duties, right? And that's one of the challenges that I see in my clients, is that they feel like if they're not doing something. But your point is, that is exactly the point. Sometimes it is exactly doing nothing or slowing down a lot that actually allows you to go faster, that allows you to get more done. I don't want to call it balance, is equilibrium, right? That there are seasons. There is a rhythm to the world that there has been an attempt by human beings to inject into what we call work. But if we followed the rhythm of the universe, right? It has a rhythm, and we're not impacting it,
Right.
right?
Not at all.
It does what it does on its own, right? We've got four seasons: winter, spring, summer, and fall. Whether where you live goes hard in the paint for each of those, right? So California, why we have four seasons, but they sort of dovetail into each
Yeah.
other, and it depends on where you are geographically in California. Some get more like cold and snow than others. Some stay relatively hot the entire time, but in general, there are four seasons, right? We have day and night. We have the seasons, and there's a time for planting and harvesting and rest in the seasons, right? And you'll look at nature, it does it on its own, right? Without regard to us. And there was a time before we became so industrialized where human beings sort of went with the rhythm of the universe, so to speak. And so in the fall, you start to slow things down. In the winter, you basically did nothing. You harvested, you stored things up to get you through those times when you weren't growing and planting, right? We're just constantly growing and planting, and everything is available to us at all the time, at least here in the United States. I don't live in other places, and there are some cultures where they are much more aligned than we are here. But if we went along with that, we probably would find ourselves being much more productive and being able to embrace that notion of taking time and tamping it down a little bit.
Yeah,
Right.
I
So
think so.
go ahead.
No, no, I was just agreeing with you.
All right. So it's important for us then to pay attention to not just getting rest, right? But if are we getting good sleep? Are we getting good nutrition? Are we paying attention to the emotional energy and how we're expending that as much as our physical energy, right? So both energy are important to pay attention to, how we are showing up emotionally as well as how we're showing up um, physically, and making sure that as we are taking time to recover, that we're doing both of those. And I had a thought when I am sort of not doing anything, when I'm taking my time to sort of just be to replenish, I can sit and watch movies, but I have to pay attention to the type of movies that I watch as well, right? Because
Mhm.
some movies get me all riled up,
Well, you don't relax
right?
by watching a horror movie?
Exactly,
What's wrong with
right. And
you?
and it's okay to watch one, but if you start binging, right, then you're in a sort of an emotional state around it. So it's like all of these things we just need to pay attention to. And we tend to just do without stopping to think and being intentional. And if I could leave you with anything, it is to be aware and then be intentional about what you're doing, what you're choosing to do in order to help you to recover and replenish. And some just easy strategic things to think about during the work week is to build in some white space, build in some breaks, whether you call it a break and you leave your office and go out for a walk, or shut the door, right? To put some time in between projects, like you're shifting from one project or task to another. Build in some, call it white space with that, right? One of the things that I used to love to do when I worked with other people outside the home, I don't need to do this as much anymore, is have walking, talking meetings, right? That I would get with someone and say, I need to go to a meeting, somewhere, and why don't we walk and talk on our way there, right? To get things done, but to get some movement in, to move that energy around at the same time. And here's something that I know in our particular, this particular point in time in our culture, right? Technology and having some screen free time, right? Just disconnecting from technology, whether it's a personal device, the television, movie, whatever it is, right? Tune that out. And that could be particularly a challenge for people who are reading, enjoy reading, but they're still doing it on a device or like listening. So every now and then, just pick up a real old fashioned book, right? to read something so that you can physically disconnect from the device as well as mentally and emotionally doing so.
I think that there's two things I want to say. I think that technology is an amazing thing, but we end up becoming enslaved by it to a point where and I'll even throw out a caveat. I agree with everything you said, but I'll even throw out a caveat to the people that are that need a high level of detox from technology. Stop doom scrolling. If you're if you're one of those people that has to, I have to know what's going on, then build in some time where you're looking at cat videos or something, so you're not just stressing yourself. There are some people that they just stress themselves out with that. The other thing that I want to mention is, if you think about this, I'm going to take old life coaching thing, that the wheel of life thing. We'll talk about and IPEC may have come up with this already. I know it's not an original idea that I'm having here, but if the wheel of energy, and if you look at, or if you put energy, if you envision like gauges, right? Like, let's use technology as an example. And if you were to draw a visual representation or a chart of it, and you had those four gauges: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, right, or sense of purpose, where would they be? Would one of them,
Mm,
would physical be all the way up at the top, and would emotional be all the way at the bottom, or vice versa? What you want to do is balance them out
yeah,
so that you're getting, because they feed into each other, so that you are getting the physical, you have the physical energy you need to generate the emotional support or energy that you need, or the physical energy that you need, so you can have the mental energy that you need, because that's more connected, I think. Is the physical energy will affect your mental energy and your emotional energy, and whether or not you're feeding into your physical energy by aligning what you're doing with your spiritual energy, your sense of purpose, so that you're not just doing, this happens all the time. We see this. We don't make these connections, but we see this all the time when people are doing mundane work, when they're just, stamping something over and over. There's not a whole lot of energy there, because there is no sense of purpose in that a lot of times, unless they're like, I know that this is making, my company, the top of its class, so I'm going to stamp this one widget with as much energy as I can. But most of the time, when you're doing mundane work and you don't know how it connects to the organization's mission or your own personal sense of purpose, there isn't a lot of physical energy there. So that's one thing. So you want to look at those four buckets and seeing how they cascade into each other, and making sure they're in alignment. They're not misaligned, that you're putting more emphasis on one of those buckets and neglecting other buckets.
absolutely. And that's a great segue to this last piece, which is about aligning tasks with meaning, right? So that we can naturally replenish our energy. When we are connected to our purpose, it naturally does that. Just like moving helps to replenish energy, right? So does being spiritually connected to your purpose.
Mhm.
And I love that, that sort of, I don't know if it's analogy, a metaphor, what you call it, but right, to taking that, you're stamping widgets or whatever the work is you're doing is pretty rote, and it doesn't require a lot of brain power. But if you take that and tie it to a purpose, right, it makes a huge difference. And so, there are people for whom their jobs, um, they are drained, right? Draining work depletes you faster, right? And so, whether it's physically draining or emotionally draining or mentally draining, right, or spiritually draining, because it sort of isn't speaking to you, is finding a way to make those connections, because the more you ask the question of what's going to energize you, right? You may have to work really hard, right? And this could be a place where working with a coach could be helpful for you. But you're leading a team and you are feeling drained at the end of the day because of who's on your team, whether it's personalities, the way they show up or don't show up, right? Helping you to take a step back and reevaluate what will energize you. Would it be having them show up in a particular way? So then you have to ask, what do I need to do to help them show up that way, right? So that all of this stuff is interconnected. Nothing is in a vacuum. And when you start asking the questions and getting some awareness around what's going on, and then making a decision to be intentional about what you're going to do about it, you can start to shift both how you're showing up and how you want to show up, right? So, currently, how you're showing up, how you want to show up, and then figuring out what it is you need to do in order to get there. One of the things that and I'll share this story, when I was in law school. And for a period of time in law school. So I went to law school, I went at night, I went part time, and so I was in law school for 4 years. The first year was, I knew it was going to take a lot. There was a lot of reading. They told us to prepare for like 4 hours of reading for every hour of class, right? So I'm in class 4 hours a night, 4 days a week, but that's 16 hours for that's 64 hours of study. I had a full-time job, 40,
Mhm.
I was working 40 hours. So now we're at 100 plus hours between school. I had a son. I didn't have a personal life. I gave up everything, right? And made a conscious decision that in order to do this, I was going to have to put life on the back burner. But one of the things I learned really quickly was that I did need to carve out some time for myself, that I needed to take care of myself physically, right? Which meant finding time to move, and I would find those moments anywhere I could when I took my son to football practice or baseball practice or whatever he was doing. I'm waiting for him to just get out and walk around the track or walk around the block, right? So there are things that you can do, and I realized that if I didn't do them, that I was not going to make it through, because the demands on my time didn't leave a lot of time outside of that. But the reason that I was doing it, right? The purpose behind it was something that I was constantly leveraging and reminding myself of to get through, right? The hours and hours of reading. And so I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, even on the weekends,
Mhm.
especially on the weekends, right? To read and to study, and to study in the middle of the day, and to find ways to continuously, uh, even if it was just for short periods of time, right? Just remind myself that this is what I needed to do to be energized in order to get through things. And so it's about the work being meaningful, right? It's about leveraging the purpose behind in order to stay energetic. And your role as a leader is to help other people. And if you are not finding that in and of itself is not energizing for you, then you've got to figure out what what it is for you that helps you get there. And so maybe working with a coach can help you with that. But you've got to get to a place where you understand your purpose behind it, because it is being connected to it that helps to replenish us.
Agreed. Agreed.
All right. So, with that, we're going to wrap this up. I want to leave this question with you as we wrap this up. What's one thing that you did this week that gave you energy instead of draining? Right? So, what's something that you've already done? And then another question, similar question, is what is something that you could do, right? That will give you energy instead of draining. And to think about it, well, again, is it moving? Is it letting go of things? Is it adding joy? Right? And sometimes it's that adding joy back into your life. What is an activity that you actually enjoy? So it could, often we think burnout, we're like, I need to let go, let go, let go. Sometimes it's about bringing joy in as well, right? So let go of things that are not serving you, find some things that bring you joy, get connected to your purpose, right? Because that's going to naturally replenish you. Make sure that you're resting, taking your breaks, um, taking vacations, scheduling in some downtime, and then being clear about what your patterns are, right? Understanding your patterns and knowing that it's not just about what you're putting on your calendar, but leveraging when you're putting it on as well. And so if you need some help with any of that, would like to give you the opportunity to connect with us to help you with this. And Robert, if someone wanted to get some help from you, how would they go about doing that?
They can reach out to me at inspireme@roberthilliardcoaching.com, or they can just go to roberthilliardcoaching.com and fill out that discovery form and let me know what challenges you're having or goals that you have for yourself. And we can get together and set up a discovery call to see if we're a good fit for each other. And we'll go from
Awesome.
there.
Awesome. And if you'd like to reach out to me, you can do that at shiftingintoaction.now.site. Shiftingintoaction.now.site. Would love to help you as well. There's a form. Let's connect. Let's talk. Let's see what the challenges are and how we can help you move through it. All right. So, thank you for joining us. We've got one more week that we're going to be talking about energy this month, and then next month we're going to move to a new theme. So if you have not checked out the newsletter, and that you should see that in the post for this episode, and check it out. We've got some curated links there for you about the things that we've been talking about this month. So, with that, thank you for joining us. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and share. If you're on LinkedIn or Facebook, I would ask for you leave comment. Let us know, did you watch this in real time? Did you watch the replay? What do you do to replenish your energy? And again, if we can be of assistance to you, please reach out. And until next time, stay energetic and take care.
Bye now.